everyone. I'm Nicole Reardon with Spotlight. I'm the Senior Director of Safety Programs with Spotlight, and we are here today to talk about Watertown biosafety permitting. I'm going to start off by talking a little bit about the different types of biosafety permitting in Watertown, and then I'll get into the details about the renewals. So biosafety permitting renewals in Watertown are every year on December 31st. So since we're mid-October now, it's a really good time to start thinking about how you're going to handle the renewal for your organization. So in Watertown, there are two types of biosafety permits. And when I go over these are taken directly from the FAQ section of the City of Watertown website. And just know that there's a lot of nuance that goes into determining whether your organization needs a low-risk registration or a high-risk permit. And the requirements for permitting in Watertown are very different than we see in most of the municipalities in Massachusetts. So for a low risk registration, it's for labs that are biosafety level 1 and are conducting work that is exempt in section 3F of the NIH guidelines and or are not creating recombinant DNA containing organisms. And then the high risk permit are labs that are biosafety level 2 or above and are conducting non-exempt recombinant DNA work that are not exempt as detailed in the NIH guidelines. So biosafety level 2 facilities not working with recombinant DNA or only working with exempt recombinant DNA materials are still required to seek a full permit in Watertown. So this is the part that's different than most municipalities in Massachusetts, that if you have biosafety level 2 materials, then you need to definitely look into if a high-risk permit is required for your organization. So before I get into the renewals, I want to talk a little bit about the high-risk permit application versus the low-risk registration and what goes into the application process, just so that you can see the difference between an initial permit versus the renewal. So for a high-risk permit, there are many documents that need to be submitted, and these are all submitted via the OpenGov portal that you will need to register for, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail in a couple minutes. But the required materials that you need to submit, aside from filling out the general application on the portal, as attachments, you need to submit your safety manuals, a summary of work document, a pest control plan statement, an organism's containment levels and decon statement, a summary of your safety training, a summary of your waste management plan, an occupational health monitoring statement, a plan to orient city representatives to your organizations, and a purity screening plan. Additionally,
it gets a little bit more complicated with the maps. So we have a template set up for creating the maps, but the maps actually then get input.
So additionally, I'm just going to skip that that slide because of that technical difficulty, but additionally, some maps are required. So there needs to be a bird's eye view map with the evacuation points for the building. And then there also needs to be a hazmat plan. So this would be a detailed plan of the inside of the lab, detailing where your safety equipment, so your fire extinguishers, your eye washes, safety showers, and your biosafety cabinets and whatnot. And then in addition, there needs to be a site security plan. So this is both a bird's eye view of the entire building, and also internally in the lab, there needs to be noted on the map where the key card access points are or the keyed access points are. And then the last few documents that need to be submitted for the new high-risk permit application, there needs to be a signed occupational health contract, and then there needs to be a certificate of insurance with the city of Watertown listed as an additional insured, and then also a workers' comp affidavit. So those are the basic required documents. And then in addition, all of the institutional biosafety committee documents are required. So for your IBC, you need to submit a roster, your protocols or summary, and then IBC meeting minutes. So for new permits, it's important to make sure that the IBC is submitted, the IBC meeting is completed well ahead of time. So we need to make sure that we're holding the IBC prior to presenting at the WBSC meeting, this will make more sense in just a minute. And then for renewals, the IBC has to be held just sometime within the calendar year. So for this year, you would have just had to have an IBC meeting sometime between January 1st, 2025 and December 31st, 2025. So in Watertown, there's a 5-person quorum, meaning that if you have a smaller company, if you just have 1 or 2 or 3 company representatives in your IBC, then you need to make sure that you are having enough community reps to reach that 5-person quorum. So typical membership is here. A note that community reps can either live or work in Watertown. So that gives a little bit more flexibility, especially if you're trying to recruit more than one community rep. In addition, community reps can be residents of surrounding communities, Watertown, Waltham, West Cambridge, Brighton, and Alston. So when you actually go to submit a new permit, you would need to register for an OpenGov account. You would fill in all of the facility information, upload the attachments that I just went over, do a final review and submission, and then the application fee is $500, and the renewal fee is also $500. So you can anticipate that coming up by December 31st this year. Once you submit a new application, gets reviewed by the Watertown Biosafety Committee, the WBSC, and they'll communicate back and forth with you directly via the portal. And then they will add you to the agenda of the next WBSC meeting. WBSC meetings are typically held on the first Thursday of every month. And the important piece of the timeline of this is that applications need to be submitted 2 weeks prior to the WBSC meeting by noon. So that means that all of your IBC materials, all of the rest of your supporting documents have to be ready for that submission date for the new permit. Once you present at the Watertown Biosafety Committee meeting, it's like a 5 to 15 minute presentation followed by a Q&A session. If all goes well, then the WBSC will recommend that the Board of Health approves your permit, and you will present at the Board of Health meeting, which is typically held on the 3rd Wednesday of every month. This meeting is, again, a meeting where you give a quick presentation. And then if the permit is approved, then you will be available. You'll be able to go onto the OpenGov website and print the permit, usually within a few days. So the low risk permit is very similar in the application process, except for that there are fewer documents required. So you don't need to have an IBC for your low risk applications, which makes the timeline much smoother. So there's a lot less lead time because you don't have to recruit those community reps and have that IBC meeting. The submission is the same. You go on OpenGov and fill in all of the application material. There are some additional or different required documents, which I'll go over, but the renewal fee is $100 and the application fee as well. So the required documents, you do need the workers' comp affidavit and the COI. So those are the two that take, I think, the longest amount of time. You need your rDNA protocol. You need to know the name of your biological waste hauler. You need the CV of the PI, waste management plan, summary of work. So there are a few documents that are needed. So it does take a little bit of time. Once you submit the low risk registration, then the WBSC will review it in the same manner, and they'll communicate with you back via the portal. The timing on approval really is up to their discretion. So if they have questions, they'll ask you. If they need additional documentation, they'll ask you. It's possible that you would be required to present at the WBSC meeting and or the Board of Health meeting. It just depends on how the review goes. So it's important to consistently check in with your portal to make sure that you're receiving the messages. And whoever registers originally for the portal will be getting emails to notify them when there's a note in the portal as well. And then an important note. So when we're talking about renewals, so amendments versus renewals. So renewals are for low risk and high risk registrations and permits every year by December 31st. Anytime you have any sort of significant change in facility or research throughout the calendar year, you need to submit an amendment. So the WBSC really doesn't want organizations to wait for the annual renewal in order to submit an amendment. So, for example, if you have a facility that has expanded into a different space, or you've moved, or say your research has changed and now you're working with lentiviral vectors, things like this would require an amendment, and that would be a separate process. So the amendment is very similar to the initial application process and requires updates, if needed, on all of the required documentation that you originally submitted for your permit. And then it may or may not require presentations at the WBSC and or the Board of Health meeting, again, up to the WBSC's discretion. But really the note here is to separate the amendments from the annual renewals. For the renewals, when it's time to submit the renewal applications, the WBSC will notify the person that's associated with the OpenGov account via email, and they'll let them know that the account is now ready to submit the renewal application. So what will happen is you'll go into your OpenGov portal and you'll go into your biosafety permit or your registration, and you'll click on it and you'll see that there's a button there that is for starting the renewal process. And once you hit that button, it'll open up to what all of the required documents are for the renewal. And it's a lot less than for the initial process. So in the past, required documents for the renewal, you need to confirm the PI. You need to make sure that that organism's containment and decon document is updated. You need to make sure that your COI is attached and that the city of Watertown is listed. And then a lot of times we'll find that insurance has expired between the time when the original application was submitted and the renewal. So it's important just to check that expiration date, because that is something that the WBSC will look for, and then renew the insurance if you need to. Same thing with the workers' compensation affidavit, to make sure that workers' comp insurance hasn't expired. And if it has, just submit the renewal and make sure that that date is updated. We need to make sure that a safety training description is added for the renewals, and also IBC meeting minutes. So that's from that IBC meeting that was held at some point within the calendar year. There could be more than one IBC meeting within the calendar year based on if there were changes to the science or facility, or if there was an amendment. So you need to add those minutes in there. And then an updated summary of work, and then the $500 fee. And then same thing, the portal reviewers will go in and they will communicate with you and ask you more information or let you know if there are any changes needed via the portal. We haven't seen presentations be required for renewals. We haven't seen site inspections yet be required for renewals, and actually for initial applications and amendments as well. That could change in the future, but we haven't seen, historically, we haven't seen site inspections or presentations required for the renewals. So we are happy to support companies through this process or to advise on the process. Feel free to reach out to info@spotlightsolutions.com, and we can answer any questions that you have separately, or we can talk to you about how we can support your renewal process so that you make sure that you hit that December 31st deadline. But in the meantime, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has for me today. Okay. All right. Thanks everyone for coming, and we are looking forward to hearing from you.